basic Xorg software installation. So this is the actual code to give support for a GUI. Much of this is the same as the original LFS project, as you might guess. The one thing I will point out is that it says that the instructions here assume that all packages have been built. So if for some reason you have skipped a package, it may be an idea to go back and build that now, unless you're prepared to go through and adapt these instructions to get it to build or to work even. It also recommends the sudo package because there's a script to automate parts of this. There are several packages for certain pieces of functionality that are downloaded and built and installed automatically. When I say built and installed, they're still compiled, but to obviously install them, root users needed. It's not absolutely necessary to build sudo. In the script, it does cater for not having sudo, does it slightly differently, but you might still be prompted at every install to put a password in. And it also does recommend here, I think, to change the option, as I've already done, so that it doesn't ask a password with sudo, that it just works using the no password option. So that's not actually on this page, it's probably on the next page, or when we come to install the packages that are installed in bulk. There's several sections like that. Basically, if I do listing I think these XCB utils, the lib, everything in font, and app are the sections where there's like a bulk installation of Xorg software. So we'll start by carrying on with this. Again, this assumes that you've set up the scripts, the profile scripts, for this to work. It puts scripts into that profile.d directory, so it's very possible that it uses some of the helper scripts that are installed as well. So again, if you haven't done that, or you've done something differently, might be worth checking back on that, or adjusting these instructions. So first of all, Xorg gets installed into the user directory. Obviously, I presume you would be able to modify that and put it elsewhere, but you'd probably have to make other adjustments as well. Then there's a default config that's appended to some of the config commands for each package. Sometimes you'll see a complaint about this disable static not being recognized, but that's not normally a problem, it's just a warning. And then we can make them more permanent as a root user. So I've got to use the sudo -e. I'll just use my little alias, and that should retain those two variables I've just set. So I'll just check that, and you can see, so I'm now root, but it's retained the Kernotex environment and they still exist, so that means that this script will work correctly now. So let's copy that again. And if you've installed sudo, ensure the Xorg config is available in the sudo environment. So yeah, I have got sudo, so I just need to do this, and it adds that environment variable to the environment, so that ensures that it is always available when we sudo. I still do the -e to make sure the environment is -E is passed down, but just to be sure, but it's probably not absolutely necessary. So that's the environment set up. So we proceed with the first package, and a lot of these are tiny little packages. There's not a lot in them, but still very necessary. So you can see this is the configure command running with the Xorg config environment variable, and if you remember, that was the default installation location. The default configuration settings. So Yeah, you can see there it says warning, there's an unrecognised option, but it's not anything to worry about, and it's repeated there at the end. So we can now become root to install that, and we carry on. As I say, a lot of these are tiny, they just take a matter of seconds to install. A bit fiddly, but as I say, important. So Xorg Proto next. Slightly different setup, but there's no pre-defined variables for this Meson and Ninja setup. It's explicitly set where the destination is. And that's that. libxau. So this one we're able to check, that's a pass. So we can install that and clean up and rebuild for 32-bit. And now install. libxdmcp. Again, we can check this one. That's a pass. So we can install that and rebuild for 32-bit. Move on to XCB Proto. Make check and install. Just actually thought, just stepping back, don't see any reason why that Xorg config couldn't be put in there, to be quite honest. Oh, I see, it's because it's got other suffixes, that's why. Right. Okay. So make check. Make install, right. Make install, and then if you're upgrading, run that command. So we're not doing that. So we can tidy up and move on. Okay, so we've got errors here, and it's because I'm using a Latin 1 environment variable for the language. So what I do when this happens, and it seems to mostly happen with libxcb, is I set my, or override my lang variable just for this package, and I set it to the UTF-8 version of my language. So normally that's en_gb dot ISO dash 8559 I think it is. So if I'll have to reconfigure this, come to think of it. So let's come out of that. Let's start from afresh. CB. Right, and recall that command. It should now work. Okay, maybe it's the make needs that prefix as well. May not even be the configure, may just be the make full stop, but it's not a problem. I can just remove that and rerun make, and as you can see, it's carried on now. And as you can see, it's successfully completed. So I'll retain that when I do the check for the testing. That's passed. And again, install permissioned. Oh, right, okay. And do it as the root user might help. And that's done. So just got to change the permissions because we built the package as a non-root user, and it says the documentation's owned by that user. So we just change the ownership, and now we rebuild for 32-bit. So I'll try the config without the lang setting, and I'll retain obviously the lang setting for make because that was definitely required. Yeah, it looks like that was still successful, and it's still building successfully as well. So it's just the make command that needs that locale reset, the lang variable reset to the UTF-8 setting. So now it become root. Looks like I might need that. Right, let's retain that lang variable. So let's copy it here. Oh, it's not printed that. Save me typing in again. So lang, and then I can copy the rest of this in as it is. And that's complete. So which 2.23 and alternatives? Well, there is only one alternative, I think, on here. And it's a which script, which I used to do because it's quick and simple. You copy and paste and it's done. But I did find over time that occasionally which failed for some reason. There was some aspect of it or some program that used which didn't recognize it, or it didn't behave the way it expected. So I just install which now. It's a small program anyway. It's only a little bit more effort, and to avoid the grief of having some problem that you can't track down and it turns out it is which, it's probably not worth the script. Script might be nice for a quick knock up, but you know, if you're trying to get something working, but to be honest, for a system that you're building, I'd stick with the package is my advice. So we'll extract it configure and compile it. There's no installation, test suite, so we'll just install it. And as you can see, that took a matter of seconds anyway. So it's really simple to install. So libpng next. So you can apply a patch here to support, I presume it's PNGs with an alpha channel, that A for transparency. I think it's normally a good idea to apply that. I think there are some packages that expect that functionality in BLFS, so probably doesn't matter here if it says if you want, but if you do go to install other packages, it may make a difference. So that's compiled. Let's run some tests. Okay, all passed, so that's good. We can now install that package and rebuild it for 32-bit. And that's complete. FreeType pass 1. So I think FreeType's installed twice because the next package, HalfBuzz, requires FreeType and FreeType requires HalfBuzz. So I think, as I seem to remember, we build FreeType first without HalfBuzz support, and then it gets rebuilt with HalfBuzz support after, obviously, HalfBuzz has been installed. So some additional documentation, and install it with these commands. And install it, and install the additional documentation. And now we rebuild for 32-bit. And install that. And now we can install HalfBuzz. Okay, that's done, so we'll install it now. And build the 32-bit version. Okay, that's done. Let's install 32-bit version. And that's half buzz complete. So free type pass 2. So it's actually not twice we installed it, it's 4 times because obviously we're building for 32-bit. So you can see why this takes a little bit longer for multi-lib. Install the 64-bit and repeat for 32-bit. So that's complete now. And move on to font config. So it says there's an internet connection needed for some of the tests, and if you haven't done so, MakeCA may need to be set up as well before testing the package. Okay, we can run make check. Okay, we've got one failure. Run test.sh. Right, okay, it says one test known to fail if kernel does support user namespaces. So that's probably what that is. So let's install that and repeat for 32-bit. Install, and it's done. Config files, so it mentions the configuration files, and yeah, that's done. So Xorg libraries, so this is the first of the suite of packages we install for Xorg. Now what you need to do, I've obviously done this so I can't repeat it again, but copy and paste that into the terminal so you get this file lib7 list, such as that, just a list of the files. You then run these commands and that will fetch the files and put them in a directory called lib. So if I change into that now, you can see those files are there. Now this is the script to allow installation by root automatically while still building the packages as a normal user. So I want to copy that because it caters for several situations, including whether you have or haven't got sudo. It mentions there about adding doing the test and checking the output of the test, but I didn't bother with that. They're fairly simple. I can't recall any ever failing at all, but you could do that if you wanted to. And also I think because it's commenting out the RMRF to remove the directories, you'd have to go and manually remove all the directories after it's been built rather than leave them lying around. So it's a bit more involved doing that. So I just carried on with running this bashy to create a new environment that will exit if there's an error, and then copy this script and run it and wait for it to process all those libraries, those packages, and then as you can see you just repeat that. You put the new script in and rerun to build the 32-bit of the required libraries. Okay, we run that for 32-bit now. Okay, so that's done. We can exit that shell started to return. And we'll look at the directory and you can see there's nothing left. So we can return to the source directory and carry on. libxcvt. Okay, there's no test suite. So we'll install and build 32-bit version. And install it. And move on to CMake. So as I say, this may take a little while. So we'll just have to wait for that. So I'll copy this in, I'll put the time in, just so I know how much time it takes, and wait for it to build. Okay, so that took 10 minutes to build. Let's run the tests with this command here. And I'll get a time of that as well. Okay, so those tests are past 100%, and we can install that now. And tidy up. And move on to dbus. So this is actually dbus pass 2, even though it doesn't mention that. This is the second time round. And we'll install that. And we're not using Desta install, so we can skip that. Configuration. The above configuration file should probably not be modified. If any package install a dbus service file outside of the standard directory, then that should be added to the local session configuration. For instance, the user local shared dbus1 services can be added by performing the following commands as the root user. Let's see if that exists. So no, it doesn't exist at the moment. Oh, I see. So it's saying anything outside should be added, but this directory, although it doesn't exist at the moment, is actually being added here. So let's do that. And we need to install some boot scripts. So let's go back to, where are we? BLFS, no. And install them. Note that this only installs this boot script for the system-wide dbus daemon. Each user requiring access to dbus will also need to run a session daemon as well, and it shows you ways of doing that. So it says now would be a good time to reboot and test to see if dbus, login d, etc. works, and you can log in. Run the command login control after ensuring dbus is running. So when I tried to do this test, it didn't work for an ordinary user, but it did work for root. So I'm going to come out of this. I'll tidy up the source directory and I'll log out of this, and I'll do Control-Alt-Delete on the laptop to reboot it. So obviously you can't see this at the moment because it's not connected to the screen. But I can say that the laptop is starting up. And I've got the grub prompt. So it's just booting the kernel. Now the startup files are running and I've got a prompt, so I'll log in as root. And that works. So Let's log back in here. And if I try typing in login CTL, yeah, it says no sessions, and it says the result should indicate that a session and seat has been created. Now, if I become the root and do the same, you can see it's actually come up with a session number and a, oh, there isn't actually any seat there, but it's come up differently. So I assumed that was successful. I couldn't get it to work any other way. I couldn't see that there was anything wrong with the installation, but it shows the binaries working anyway, so it may need further configuration for ordinary users. Perhaps that's it, and perhaps part of the later installation of other packages and configuration does actually get that working, because I didn't have any, to my knowledge, any problems at all later on that I could have attributed to this anyway. So I'll come back to the Kernotex. I'll take that as a successful build and carry on with lib unwind. Is it just called unwind? Is it? No lib. Oh, I'm not in the sources directory because I've rebooted. So configure and compile that. Okay, so let's run the tests. And that's all passed, so let's install that. And rebuild for 32-bit. And that's done. So nettle next. And configure and compile it. And run some tests. Okay, all passed. So install it and tidy up. And move on to GNU TLS. Okay, let's run some tests. Okay, that's done. So let's now install. Wasn't any errors there. And that's complete. So move on to Pixman. And run some tests. Okay, so that's all passed. Install that, and that's complete. So we move on to Wayland now. There's a little section for Wayland which has 3 packages in it. This being obviously the first. Okay, run some tests. And install it, and then rerun for 32-bit. And again, we can run tests for these 32-bit programs. And install. So that's complete. And move on to Wayland's protocols. Run some tests. All successful. So we install. Okay, so seat D. So if you recall, seat D actually downloads as 0.9.1.tar.gz, as you can see in the URL here, and it just gets renamed to make it obvious as to what package it is, because a number just could be anything. Okay, that's a quick one, and install it. And that's complete.